welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of one of my favorite mystery reads of the year. It is so lovely. It is absolutely impossible to put down, and it is filled with characters that I just immediately fell in love with. It is so, so lovely. So I'm so excited for this chat. Welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Hi, Jen, and hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Chapman. I am the author of Mrs. Christie at the Mystery Guild Library, which kind of says it all. It's about a library that's about mysteries and someone claiming to be Agatha Christie on holiday from the great beyond arrives at this library. And it all evolves from there. She is sort of welcomed by this rather quiet and introverted book conservator who works for the library, but who also lives in the same building as the library. It was an old family home. And her name is Tori Van Dyne, and she has always prided herself on living a sane, safe, sensible life. She's had some trauma in her past, let us say. And she comes from a very eccentric, old money New York family, including a grandfather who writes dirty limericks and a great aunt who has spells where she thinks she's a goldfish. So Tori just figures, yeah, well, I'm just a Van Dyne. We're all a little bit nutty. But she didn't think she was nutty enough to actually believe that this woman who has shown up at the Mystery Guild Library in a room which is actually almost a complete replica of Agatha Christie's own library back in Devon, England, in Greenway House. This woman shows up and introduces herself as Agatha Christie, and Tori just is not going to believe that. She just thinks it's a nutty fangirl, and she tries to be polite. So she asks what Mrs. Christie is doing there, and she says, well, I'm here to help solve a murder. And Tori says, but I don't have a murder to solve, thank goodness. And Mrs. Christie says, oh, but you will. I'm certain of that, you will. And being Mrs. Christie, whoever or whatever she is, she's absolutely right about that. And it proceeds from there.
When this book landed in my inbox, that concept just hooked me immediately. It's such a fun idea, and it allows you to play with what is clearly a very deep knowledge of Agatha Christie's body of work. Before we get too much into her and your book, could you tell us a little bit about your journey as a writer? What brought you to writing, and
Sure.
what brought you here?
Well, I think it helps that I've read all 66 of Agatha Christie's novels, but I think writers start out as readers. I think that certainly was the case with myself. You're a library person, you get it. We live to read books. That's what we do. Now, I spent my whole life making a living with my pen, but most of that was in corporate communications, doing employee communications. And then at a certain point, I just said, you know what? I'm going to try this. I had an old friend who had been a literary agent, and I sent her 3 chapters and said, you tell me whether to keep going or stop. And she said, keep going. And so I did. And I actually wrote 3, what I guess would be more traditional cozy mysteries before I wrote this one. And they were a lot of fun. They were called the Cape Cod Foodie Mysteries. I'm a foodie, what can I say? I read and I cook food and eat it. And so I did these 3 mysteries, and Penguin Random House published them under the name Amy Pershing. And then I just got this other idea, and I just said, what would happen if Agatha Christie actually showed up in today's, no kidding, in today's New York, as opposed to London, because I know New York. I don't know London. You got to write what you know. And it just kind of evolved from there. Also, I should mention that my grandmother, also named Margaret Jane, you will remember that name, actually was a great book collector and loved Emily Dickinson. And she actually collected all of the books that were in Emily Dickinson's private library to recreate that library and just sort of understand how Emily Dickinson's mind worked. And in this actual Mystery Guild library, I play on that idea too, in the Christie room, which is filled with all of those books that are the same books that Agatha Christie. So I thought, that might, sometimes I would think that my grandmother would maybe go into this little library and Emily Dickinson would come and chat with her, because I was just a kid. I didn't really understand this. And so when I started thinking of this, I thought, well, a room like that could be a portal. I mean, if you were the kind of person who believed in portals, which I am not, Tori Van Dyne would tell you. And so then I started on this series, and I'm actually now working on the second book. So it's been just great fun.
It's sort of like the bibliophiles version of Field of Dreams, right? Like if you build it, they will come.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect.
So
I built it and she came. It was amazing.
this library is the brainchild, as you said, of the Van Dyne family. Could you tell us a little bit about Tori and her family? As you said, they are an old New York money family, and there is so much quirk there and so much just like really lots of like really fun, gentle antics, I would say.
Yes, yes. Well, there was that grandfather given to penning naughty limericks, and he's a delight, and he's sort of kooky, and managed to run through an awful lot of the Van Dyne money. So as much as they're called old money family, there's not a lot of the old money left, thanks to Grandpa. Then there is Great Aunt Doris, who I love. Great Aunt Doris, really does sometimes think she's a goldfish, and there's a Sunday dinner every Sunday at what Tori calls the family pile up on Upper Fifth Avenue. And the first one, you meet Great Aunt Doris, and she's wearing little pink swimmies on her arms, like little 3-year-old girls do in the pool. And that's just, she often will dress sort of fish inspired. So she's a hoot. She's a love. And then there's cousin Nick. Nick plays a large role in this. Tori has a cousin, Nicola Van Dyne, and she is a Broadway actor, popularly known as one of the three bells of Broadway. And she is a free spirit and as opposite from Nick as can be. And they just love, love, love each other, as Nick would say. I just love, love, love Tori. And Tori just loves, love, love Nick. But Nick is a free spirit. She dances half naked in public fountains. She's just a delight, and she's kooky, but she's not intellectual, but she's very intuitive. So she brings a different perspective to everything, and I think a lightness to what could, be fairly serious themes sometimes. So that's kind of the family. Her father managed to poof away a lot of the money that was left, which means that Tori, and thankfully, had to go out and make a living. And that's how she says she's much happier, and I believe her. Obviously, these people are real to me. She said she's never been good as a society girl. Nick is great as a society girl. Tori is no good at it. But she loves what she does. She loves working on old books. She loves books, and she loves to read. So she's a happy woman, but doesn't mean that we don't have some issues to work on. She's quite shy, fairly reclusive.
Yeah, she is really living my dream, both in terms of her occupation and where she lives. So she lives on Washington Square North, right? In one of
That's
the
right.
gorgeous old brownstones. And so 20 plus years ago now, I was an undergrad at NYU. And so I
Oh,
spent a
kidding.
lot of time in that
I
neighborhood
read
and in
about
those
your
buildings.
neighborhood. That
Yeah.
was we were probably there around the same time. Oh my
Oh.
goodness. That was my neighborhood too. Well, not actually on the square because obviously I'm not a Van Dyne. Uh, but it's a fabulous neighborhood and I like to think of New York and particularly that piece of the village as a character in and of itself in the book. That's part of her family. And speaking of family, now that you mention it, there's kind of found family in this as well. It's she there's a lovely little young Irish girl, computer whiz, who shows up and wants to be a book doctor and ends up being sort of part of the detecting team. So she's part of the found family. And there's Adrian Gooding, the actual librarian, who is incredible dresser. And Tori relies on Adrian because Adrian believes in precisely nothing. So she knows he's not going to believe that this woman sitting up there in the Christie room is actually Agatha Christie. And then, of course, there's NYPD detective Sebastian Mendez Cruz, who is a lovely man and smart guy, good detective, horrible taste in suits, but pretty hot guy nonetheless. At least Tori thinks so. But yeah, that neighborhood is just it's a wonderful place to set all this. It's a beautiful place and full of a vast array of people and things that happen, like the Halloween parade that shows that it becomes important. So I'm so glad that you know the neighborhood.
Yeah, it was really lovely to see her go to Veselka too, which is one of my favorite spots in the city. I was literally just there like 2 weeks ago, and I was reading your book in Veselka when I got to that line. I was like, what?
And you didn't take a selfie?
I know, I should have actually.
Or called me. I would have gone in.
It was like method reading. I felt I was so immersed in.
Oh, I love it. That is so great. That is wonderful.
So that brings us to Agatha herself, or is she? I'd love to know how you went about capturing her voice. Did you revisit her books? Were there other sources you looked at?
Yeah, what I found was that the best thing you can do, and when I did this research, I think the real key to getting a sense of her voice and herself is the books that she wrote in her own voice about her own life. She wrote an autobiography, which is utterly charming. It's just lovely. She wrote a series of letters to her mother around a world tour that she took with her first husband, Archie Christie, who I call the cad Archie Christie, in 1922. And those letters were collected in a book called The Grand Tour. And they're just wonderful. And that's where you learn about things like the fact that Agatha Christie loved to surf. She learned how to surf in South Africa. She and Archie went to Hawaii, and surfing in Hawaii was fantastic. This is not what you expect from Agatha Christie. You also find out she's quite shy. She's quite retiring, and she can be very, very funny. There is perhaps my favorite book that she wrote, which is a book called Come Tell Me How You Live. And it's a very interesting account of the first dig that she and her second husband, the archaeologist Max Mallowan, Sir Max Mallowan, did in Syria. And she just comes along for the ride, and it's just terrific. So again, you get this voice, you get this sense of humor, you get this sense of privacy and dignity, but she's very, very warm. And I felt as though after I really read those books, I felt like the voice, that kind of sensible, mischievous, charming voice, kind of lived in my head. So I could do it. And you can see her online, obviously. So you get a sense of, I talk about the music of her voice and her laughter and stuff like that. But it made writing her dialogue just an absolute joy because I felt like I knew her.
She's very funny, and she's very observant. And I really love the sort of the delicate line that she toes in guiding our ensemble to solving this mystery, but allowing them to come to conclusions on their own. She really like helps them grow as people too over the course of the story in a very heartwarming way.
I think that's very perceptive of you. Sometimes people tell me things about my books, and I think, really? Did I do that? And then I think I did. They know more about my book than I did. But yes, she does. And they talk about the fact that sometimes you have to throw your old theory away and come up with a new theory. She's also, part of this sort of group, this found family, or whatever you want to call it, includes an NYPD detective who is trying to solve the various murders that do actually appear. And he's no dummy, so he has ideas and thoughts too. And they probably work more closely together than any of the others in the thing. But she's very respectful of everybody's ideas, and everybody, by the end, really contributes something. Even Mairead, well, actually, especially Mairead, even Nick, I should say.
Yes.
But yeah, she's very respectful, and she wants everybody to have a voice, and that voice is always helpful.
Absolutely. In terms of the mystery itself, and speaking very broadly, I'm not going to reveal anything that the readers would like to, discover on their own. But when you craft a mystery, where does it begin for you? Is it the question or the answer? Like, do you start at the beginning and then tell a story from there, or do you reverse engineer from the end? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I think all writers of mysteries take one of two approaches. One is fly by the seat of your pants and see what happens, see what your characters do. And the other one is to take control from the very beginning. That's me. What works for me, and as I said, I've done 3 mysteries before this, is I do not fly by the seat of my pants. I outline like mad, because it's very tricky stuff. You have to lay all these Easter eggs in advance. You have to make sure you know where all the red herrings are. You have to make sure at the end of the book that all of those Easter egg clues that you put in chapter, let's say 11, show up at the end and are explained as part of the final solution to the thing. That being said, even Agatha Christie didn't always know who done it. She wrote 66 whodunits, and she wasn't sure while she was writing them. There's a wonderful book, I actually have it right here with me, called Agatha Christie's Complete Secret Notebooks. And she just filled these notebooks, and I find I do the same thing. I have a pile of notebooks this high for each book, with plans and characters and how they would work and who done it. And there are definitely times where she's went, nope, that doesn't work. We're going to switch it. Now, I didn't go that far, but I did have a final twist in this first book for the Agatha series that I did not expect. And then it just, woo, and that's what that's the flying by the seat of your pants thing. That's when characters come alive and do their own thing, which is a mystery author. You don't want them to, because they're supposed to do what you want them to do. But then every once in a while they do their own thing, and great stuff comes out of that. So you have to be a little bit flexible.
Yeah, it's a lot of plates that you have to keep spinning. And I'm always sort of impressed by, the threading of clues and red herrings, that you have to draw attention to it, but not too much attention to it. It's really
I know. And you and I, and I'm sure as many people listening, as mystery readers, we know that author is going to do that. They're going to put Easter eggs in there. They're going to put red herrings in there. They're going to make you think you've got it. And then, of course, if you think you've got it, you don't have it, because it has to be somebody else. And it just drives you crazy as a reader. It's even harder as the writer, I have to say. Yeah, because you want them to go, oh yeah, I remember that, but I didn't think enough about it at the time. That's how a good clue falls in place.
And, I never really thought about it this way, but I imagine while you're writing a mystery, for a time there are like several versions of the book living in your head at once while you are kind of considering different outcomes, different possibilities.
Yeah, different people.
Yeah.
Oh God, I think I need somebody else in here somewhere. Yeah, and that's where the notebooks do help, because you're like, oh, I know I had a good idea. Always the best ideas come to you at like 5:30 in the morning when you're waking up and going, I don't want to be awake. I don't want to be awake. And then this great idea comes and you think, okay, well, I'll go back to sleep and then I'll remember it. You don't. You've got to get up and put it in your notebook. But yeah, it's very hard to keep all those plates spinning. And there are times, and Agatha Christie talks about those times too, where you just wring your hands and you just think, can't do it, can't solve it. And somehow you do.
Wow. So you did hint before that you are working on another book in this series. That's wonderful to hear. Without giving too much away, I know that, it's secretive at this point, but is there anything that you can tell us about the further adventures of Tori and Agatha?
Well, we're playing with the title, and the title could give you a hint to come. As you know, there's a muse. I mean, not that you would really pay attention to this, but there's a muse, a small little lane behind the Mystery Guild Library. And the library building, also where Tori lives, has access back to that muse as well as to the park. And so the second book at the moment, and these things can change because publishers change things all the time. At the moment, it's called Mrs. Christie and the Mystery in the Muse. Now you may, if you're a Christie person, you may remember that there was a famous Agatha Christie called The Murder in the Muse. And it revolves around an actual copy, original first edition of The Murder in the Muse. And it all arise from that, and there is a murder, well, leading to the muse, not exactly in the muse. So it's there. There's, needless to say, somebody gets it. As my agent once told me, it's very important that somebody gets murdered by page 80. So I try to stick to that rule. Cold-blooded as it seems. But the gang will all be there. Tori's there, Nick is there. And Nick plays a wonderful role. She plays the role of Puck in in Midsummer Night's Dream in Central Park anyway, it's just lovely. Mairead is there. Mrs. Christie, of course, is there. And Sebastian, who's been away for a little while, that's just a little spoiler, is there as well. So things continue. They're never easy, but the gang is still a great gang.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. And when I was in college, I was obsessed with those muse because it feels like you're stepping back a century or two in time when you walk that little lane. It's
I know. I was the same way. I lived on East 11th, so I only had to go up a few blocks, and you were even closer than I was. And they are just, it's utterly charming until, of course, there's a dead body.
Yes.
Dang.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your book. I am so excited to continue to recommend this to people, and we eagerly await the next installment. So thank you.
Well, you're very, very good to have me. You're a wonderful interviewer. I really enjoyed talking to you. And yes, I'm thrilled that you like the book. It means a lot.
All right, listeners, so please check out Mrs. Christie at the Mystery Guild Library. It is out now as we record. It will be out when you hear this. This is an absolutely just a delightful read. I really cannot recommend it highly enough. You're going to love it. All right, thank you for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.